I want the pursuit of truth, so hopefully this is the last one. Just showing what's happening in Gaza. And that's not to take away what happened on October the 7th to Israel. It was a heinous crime, a massacre, the worst since the Holocaust. It is no place in humanity's history for people to be doing the things that they're doing. And of course now we're watching live, as it were, what's happening to the people of Gaza. And well, we don't really know because journalists aren't really that objective. And obviously in war, truth is the first casualty. So what Hamas say and what Palestinians say and what Jews in Israel say, Muslims, and there's all confirmation bias and bias in general and history that's shaping people's views of things. So it's very difficult for people outside to actually feel and get that truth. But what we all can see, and why I put these things, isn't, I'm not trying to say anything other than innocent children and women and elderly and, the people that we know are innocent. I mean, I know we can't see people's hearts, only God can see that. But there are a lot of innocent people we're seeing dying now. And what's interesting to me is how the international world seems oblivious to, stoic to it. They keep talking about international law when they can quite clearly see that it's probably being flagrated and nothing's been done about it. Who's going to hold people accountable for it and stop it from escalating? I don't want Israel to not get the terrorists. I do want those people who did those horrendous things on October 7th to be caught, because what they did was wrong. And we need to know why they did it, and we need to just try and stop that by solving the problem in Palestine, the whole world, in my view, in the system we live in, to solve that problem. But in my view, in the new ways, is to actually see that, wait a minute, we're all human beings. Land is not owned by any human being. We found ourselves here. We don't know why we're here. Let's all live together and stop calling things and tagging things and possessing things that we can never possess. Okay, so here's a few more from Sky News.
Supplies would start coming through. Another day of...
Let me go back a bit.
Continued all along the Strip. Here at the Bureij refugee camp, with for Israel some success, Hamas confirming that one of their top military commanders, Ayman Nofal, who was responsible for coordinating activity with Gaza's other militant groups, was killed in this hit. Other strikes with apparently less strategic gain. This bakery nearby also targeted and 4 of its workers killed. And the food that is so hard to come by in Gaza now, literally burning. In the south of the Strip, the Rafah crossing stays closed, despite the US president's declaration that humanitarian supplies would start coming through. Another day of waiting, too, for those desperate to leave.
Unfortunately, all Gaza is under attack. All Gaza is a place or a ground for complete bombing. So I ask the people out there, the people who have a heart, who do care, to find us a safe haven, or at least get us out of Gaza.
At least there are some still smiling. This little boy and his sister, crouched in the rubble in the southern city of Khan Yunis, delighted and a little shy at the attention of our team. A touch of innocence amongst all this misery. But mostly it is just misery. An accumulation of bloodied body bags and the wrenching pain of those not quite ready to say goodbye. Diana Magney, Sky News.
Well, since Tuesday's deadly blast, anger has been spreading across the Middle East. Multiple protests broke out in the West Bank, the largest in Ramallah, where hundreds of Palestinians clashed with security forces. From there, our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, has this report.
Live fire, ambulances, smoke and stone-throwing youngsters. The West Bank is seething after the Gaza hospital disaster. There's 3 days of mourning and a general strike here after a terrible week and a half in this troubled region. Small groups of youngsters are taunting the Israeli Defense Forces stationed at the main military communications hub. Above them, snipers wait and watch. And every now and again, they fire. Bullets, not tear gas. Ambulance teams rush forward to pick up the latest to be shot. They're treated as quickly as possible at the scene before speeding off. There's nothing unusual about these pictures on the West Bank, but 4 youngsters were shot for throwing stones right in front of us, and we didn't stay for a very long time. It says so much about life here and how violence dominates everything.
Over 60 people have been killed in clashes in the last week or so on the West Bank. It's not much reported, but it is a fact, and that's something that really explains how this has changed. 60 is hardly mentioned. That's because so many are dying in Gaza and, of course, in that attack by Hamas.
The centre of Ramallah was brought to a standstill by relatively modest crowds demonstrating against events in Gaza. The West Bank has been quite quiet since the Hamas attack in southern Israel, and Hamas wanted people on the streets. The crowd paused for prayers for the people of Gaza, led by Hassan Youssef. He's a senior Hamas leader. Beyond a no doubt Israel wants him, his presence will be noted. The people who gathered here have varying and differing views on the future for Palestinians. For now, they're united in condemnation of Israel.
Every 1 minute, every people dying. That's enough.
From both sides?
Yeah, both sides. American, Arabic, Gaza, Jewish, it's enough. The same. Kill here and kill here. It's enough.
Do you think it will be enough? Will peace?
Maybe. Inshallah. I wish to stop the war.
I think it's our time in the West Bank to actually stand against this apartheid, to do something about it. What's happening today is part of a struggle that has been going on for 75 years, like we said before, and this should be a continuous movement. I think this is up to the people of Palestine to solve. I don't think we should look for international solutions, because that is like, this has not worked in the past. So it's up to us Palestinians to stand up and be like, this is not right.
The international community's diplomats are working round the clock to try to stop this volatile situation from exploding into a regional war. On the streets, they're waiting to see what happens. They aren't happy. Few, if any, in the Middle East are happy right now. Stuart Ramsey, Sky News, in Ramallah, on the West Bank.
I mean, just shooting people for throwing stones. Could you imagine that in any other country? But, I don't know.
Did.
Lieutenant Colonel Jonathan Conricus speaking to me late last night. Well, thousands of people are desperately seeking refuge at the Rafah border crossing with the border with Egypt as Israeli airstrikes continue to hit Gaza. The expectation is that up to 20 trucks of humanitarian aid, including food, water and medicine, could enter the region from the Egyptian side. Let's talk now to the communications officer at UNICEF for the Middle East and Africa, Salem Owais, who joins us now from Amman in Jordan. Welcome to you. And obviously you know better than anybody how desperately needed that aid is in Gaza.
Yeah, sure. The situation in Gaza, as we can see on your screen and all around the world, is really catastrophic. It's a very horrific image that we are seeing, whether it's around the children being killed. The latest numbers reported is above 1,500 children killed in the past 11 days, or almost 4,000 children injured. So with that, and with the cuts in fuel, in electricity, in water, the lack of essential services, including health, hospitals are overwhelmed and lacking the electricity to run. This aid is essential. This is really paramount to give these children and their families a lifeline at this very difficult time for them.
Well, as you said, children have been wounded, they've been displaced, but even day-to-day life is very difficult. Food, water, electricity, medicine, access to the basic necessities. Can I just check, do you have any aid waiting on the Egyptian side of the border? I know that many UN organisations do, many charities as well. What is UNICEF's role in that aid at the moment?
Yeah, we have already, we have had 3 shipments arriving in Egypt during the past week. Now, at the borders, there are almost 70 trucks. That is UNICEF, other UN agencies, and other NGOs. 70 trucks of aid is waiting for that green light to go in. And we can't emphasize enough how urgent that need is. Literally, we needed this last week, and we're still waiting for a resolution for this and a decision to get in. As you can see on the screen, the trucks are waiting, and they are full with water purification tablets, medicine, health supplies, hygiene kits, shelter, and a lot more. But these need access right now. Children are cut off water, food, and all basic services. We're hearing about families forced to use seawater for their hygiene uses, but also some of them are using seawater for drinking from unhygienic wells. It's putting the population there in danger of waterborne diseases, dehydration, and eventually death for children, unfortunately.
Well, certainly the Israelis, when the information came out last night that they wouldn't thwart attempts to send humanitarian aid over the border, were very specific about what they were going to let in: water, food, and medicine. I mean, who knows what checks will be done, but, it would be an awful situation if people had to unload these lorries to find out what was in them before it went over the border. So, I mean, have you got people there on the ground who are sort of beginning to work out the practicalities of this?
Well, we're waiting to understand more, and I think personally I didn't get any reports of final decision on that, other than what we heard on the news and from the public, from the statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. But this people in Gaza need more than that, and there's a real need, because these supplies, when you're talking about water, food, and medicine, these are going to continue to be a band-aid, and we need more solutions. Hospitals are running out of their supplies and of their equipment being hit or out of use. So the need is beyond what we have now, and the need is beyond what is we hear is allowed.
Yes, so just a sticking plaster. Certainly we spoke to Oxfam earlier. They suggested that 100 trucks a day would normally cross into Gaza before this conflict started. We're at nearly 2 weeks now where nothing's gone in with this Israeli blockade. So as you say, the urgency is there, but you obviously want it to go beyond the 20 trucks and start to become a daily occurrence that people get the things that they need.
Of course, and we will continue to mobilize all resources to get more aid delivered to Egypt or wherever else that we get a chance to get it in Gaza from. This is really, again, this is a lifeline. The humanitarian situation is really catastrophic in Gaza, and it can't wait anymore. We need this now.
Here's the next one.
Jerusalem. The Rafah border crossing is expected to open tomorrow to allow roughly 20 trucks of humanitarian aid into Gaza. But charities in the region have called the situation a health crisis on the brink of explosion. So will it be too little, too late? Joining me now is the journalist and author Sarah Helm, who formerly worked as a correspondent in Jerusalem for The Independent. And Sarah, I know you know Gaza extremely well. How difficult will the situation be there right now for the people on the Strip?
The situation will be a total nightmare. Not only has everyone been uprooted for the second time, in the sense that they are already refugees, They are now being shoved down to the south of the Gaza Strip without food, water, electricity, and without knowing what is going to happen to them next. The great fear, and I think the pattern of events would suggest that this promise of aid will now be held up due to the fact that the Israelis will demand to have checks on every single lorry crossing in from Rafah. If indeed the lorries do cross in, they will almost certainly have to be checked on the other side, on the Egyptian side. This will create a situation of bureaucratic delay, and the food will not come in, and nor will any of the other materials for several days yet. This is the pattern of events that takes place after every single one of these appalling bombardments on Gaza.
And what do you make of the evacuation order? People have obviously been asked to move from the north because of the ground offensive coming, no doubt, into the south. Suggestion is the water's been turned on there, although everyone there has said to us there's no electricity to pump it, so nobody still has water, to tempt people down there. Some people suggesting this is yet another of the mass evacuations or the mass displacements of Palestinian people like 1948 and 1967. I mean, do you fear it feels like that as well?
Yes, it feels exactly like that, and I'm pretty sure that is what the Israeli plan is. You have to remember, first of all, that nearly all the inhabitants of the Gaza Strip came from about 200 simple Palestinian villages, many of which are literally within walking distance of the current Gaza fence. They were expelled to the Gaza Strip during the war of 1948. And they have lived inside Gaza under varying degrees of occupation and blockade ever since. They have never been allowed to go back to their homes, even though UN resolutions are on the books saying they have a right of return. Now, the pattern of events is that, as in 1948, the villages were terrorized and shelled and then forced to flee. They then fled to Gaza, which was deemed safe at the time, where they've been ever since. Now, what the pattern that is now emerging is that they are now being shelled and expelled and threatened and terrorized yet again. The word you want to watch out for as events unfold here is transfer, which is the word that the Israelis and the Zionist leaders before them always used as a sort of cover for expulsion. What will happen, I predict, having followed these events and also investigated the history over many years, what will happen is that the refugees now gathering in the south will get into such difficulties of hunger and lack of water and so on, that pressure will be put on the Egyptians to open the Rafah border and let them in. And Sisi, President Sisi, has already warned that he won't allow them in because he too knows perfectly well that the Israeli plan is to permanently transfer the occupants of the Gaza Strip into Egypt, and then again they will never be allowed back. Meanwhile, Israel will be planning to annex the territory of the Gaza Strip to add it on to the state of Israel. And this is the most likely scenario. And I think one of the problems here is that world leaders and diplomats and journalists have too little knowledge of the history and the repeated patterns of this conflict to be prepared for that. And this is almost certainly the way the Israeli policy is moving.
Sarah, the Israelis do say this is absolutely not about occupation of the Gaza territory. The northern part of the Gaza Strip presumably is what we're talking about here. And nonetheless, it would be extremely complicated for them to have jurisdiction over that area. But the problem is with a ground offensive that Hamas could melt into the community, disappear for a couple of months, come back, make a few homemade rockets with the ordnance that's left around after this conflict, and back we are again. So what is the alternative, do you think?
Well, there are several alternatives, of course. One is for President Biden and Prime Minister Sunak and the UN and other world leaders to understand the gravity of where this is heading and the impunity with which Israel feels it can act. they should be aware that, of course, the Israelis won't tell them that this is what they're planning to do, but they never tell political leaders or the rest of the world what they're planning to do. So the first thing is for people to be aware that this is a distinct possibility, and it is a pattern that has unfolded over the years. Remember that they are also in the process of annexing large parts of the West Bank and East Jerusalem. So the whole aim of the state of Israel has been to acquire as much land as it possibly can. And that has been from day one. And remember that Prime Minister Netanyahu stood up at the UN about 2 weeks ago with a map of Israel, which included the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. So he made his intentions perfectly clear at that point. So the first thing is to be aware of the likely scenario. The next thing is to immediately call a ceasefire and to, put down some red lines about what Israel can actually do. Call a ceasefire, open negotiations, and start giving some hope to the Palestinians and indeed the Israelis, whose lives are threatened by this appalling debacle. Give people some hope that a wider and fair solution is going to now be on the table.
Sarah Helm, fascinating to hear your insights. Thank you very much indeed, journalist and author Sarah Helm there.
So next is, it was a press conference from relatives of the people who had been kidnapped, mostly children and elderly, just to bring it back onto the situation for these people that are going through hell, wondering whether their loved ones are ever going to come back to them.
Now with the pyjama that the Hamas gave them, that's all Maya knows regarding her daughters.
Hello, my name is Ifat. Saturday morning, October 7th, my cousin Shiri, alongside with her husband Yarden, the two beautiful children, Ariel, 4 years old, and Kfir, 9 months old baby. Her parents, Yossi and Margit Silverman, my aunt and uncle, were all kidnapped by Hamas terrorists into Gaza. I received a video, I live in Tel Aviv, I received a video around 10 o'clock in the morning, Saturday, of my cousin holding her two redhead babies, covered in a blanket. I'm sure you've all seen it by now. Surrounded by terrorists, covered in blood, not their own. This is the only sign of life that we have from them. Tomorrow will mark 14 days, 2 weeks since this happened. Actually, since yesterday, you can say Kfir is 10 months now. He was born on January 18th. I don't want to sit here in 2 months' time in a press conference celebrating his first birthday.
She's crying.
On Monday, we received a photo of Yarden, their father, being driven into the Gaza Strip on a motorcycle. Is severely injured in his head. We know nothing. We have no photos of my aunt and uncle. We only received a confirmation that they're not among the dead, and they're probably there as well. My aunt has a severe Parkinson's disease. She's without her medication. I don't know if Kfir, the baby, has formula. He doesn't eat food well yet to survive. This is torture. They're innocent civilians, innocent children in hard conditions. They're not a pawn in a game or a war. They need to be released, and released now, yesterday. This is crazy. This is a nightmare. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Hello everyone, my name is Moren Aloni. I have two sisters, Sharon, age of 34, and Danielle, age of 45. And they have three beautiful daughters, you can see them here. Emma and Yuli, age of 3, twins. And my 5.5 years old niece, Emilia. We woke up Saturday morning to an alarms, to bombings in Yavne and Rehovot as well. Immediately called them, asked how they're doing, if everything is okay. They said they didn't know anything and that they were just being told the terrorists are in the kibbutz, which wasn't even the first time that something like that happened. It's just something that they got used to live with. After half an hour, they wrote us in the family WhatsApp that they can hear the terrorists in their neighbor house. According to my understanding, people just heard screams from other house, gunshot, and then silence. And so, I don't know if that's what they heard, but after another 30 minutes, they texted us that they can hear the terrorists in their house. They were in the safe room. And this safe room cannot be locked, by the way. So you have to just keep the door closed. They said, we don't know if we're going to make it. We love you. After 1 hour or so, and we are going crazy, feeling so helpless, unable to do anything, we try to call everyone we know that has some sort of a relation to the authorities. And around 11, my sister sent a chilling voice message saying that they are burning the house and smoke is getting in under the mamad door, and they don't know if they're going to make it, and that they love us. 20 minutes later, she sent me a text, 2 messages saying, "Help, we're dying." We had no idea what's going on with them for many hours after that. And evening time, we got a hold of David family. They all lived there. And he said that the army went door by door and they were looking at the safe room and they couldn't find anything. The day after that, we saw David in one of the video clips that Hamas released, being carried on a truck of some sort. He was holding someone, I don't know if it was my sister's head or one of the twins. And we think we saw my sister Danielle and her daughter Emilia, but we don't know. It was from the back, so I don't know if to call it wishful thinking. A day after, we got in touch with one of the survivors who mentioned that during her kidnap/escape, she met David, Sharon, and one of the twins on that truck, and that David said that he was sure that he got out from the mamad with 2 babies. And he got into the truck when only one in his hands. And so that was last Monday. On Friday, we got an official notice that all the 6 are confirmed to be kidnapped. And that's what we know today as well. I'm joining the other families in saying that the conception that these are freedom fighters, this is not freedom. These are fighters, these are terrorists, and they are grabbing children, mothers, unarmed men, and they are doing God knows what to them at the moment. They need to get out of there now. Don't negotiate anything, they just need to release them, because otherwise they are lower than animals. Thank you.
Hello, I'm Hadas Calderon from Kibbutz Nir Oz. I think we all from the same place. 5 members of my family been hosted last Saturday. My mother, my niece, my boy, Erez, 12 years old, my daughter, Sahar, 16 years old, my ex-husband, Ofer, 52 years old. 2 days ago, we celebrate my mom's birthday without her, yeah? We celebrate, and we had a lot of hope. She was 80, and a wonderful woman. Yesterday, we got a message that she and my niece, Noya, she have special needs, autism. They've been together. They've been murdered. We don't know. We think our bodies were, they've been murdered out of Israel. We think it was in Gaza. We don't know exactly the details. But now, actually, I have to sit 7 days and regret for them. But I don't have time, sorry, because I have to save my children's life, and I have to fight for the children and all the elderly and the other citizen who's still alive. So I can't even sit 1 minute and have the moment to cry and to pray for them. Our kibbutz Nir Oz had an awful massacre, pogrom, horrible hell. Our kibbutz is really disappeared. After the murder and everything, they burned all houses, most of the houses. We don't have home to go back. But I don't care about home. I don't care about my stuff. I don't care about my garden. I don't care about my albums. I don't care about nothing. I don't care about my clothes. I care for one thing, and I think this is the most important here. We have to release the children and the elderly people immediately. Now, I'm a simple woman. I'm not a political woman. I can't say what to do, but I'm sure that they must have a solution. They must make a solution to talk and to agree and to release them immediately. The time is critical, yeah? Every moment they're still there, they can find themselves, same my mom. She was alive 2 days ago. I don't want them to find to be in the same situation. Every moment, it's huge danger for them. We have currently a very small window of opportunity now, and we must use it. And I can tell my story again and again, and I think we all have same different but quite same stories about the pogrom we had and how it's happened, you know. I've been in a different, because I'm divorced, I've been in a different house. I was all alone, 8 hours in the dark, without water and everything, fighting for my life, surviving, when they're trying to go inside and break and smash all my house. But my 2 children been with my husband, and they ran out from the window and hide in the bush. And this was the last message I got from them at 8 o'clock in the morning. And just at 3 o'clock afternoon, when the soldier came, we could find out they are disappeared. And realized that probably they are kidnapped. But stories we can tell. We have so many. Each one of us has a story, and a big story. Disaster stories. But what's important now is to act. I'm asking the whole government, Israeli government, I'm asking Qatar, I'm asking Sheikh Tamim, the prince, the Qatari prince, I think you have the power. I believe you can change this reality, this crazy reality. I'm asking United States, the European Union, France, my children and me and my husband, ex-husband, we are French citizens. My mom, she's American. So these children also quite Americans also. I'm asking France and America to fight like as it were their children. I believe they do it because a lot of international bodies all agree that this massacre and keeping civilians in hostage is a war crime against the humanity, against any human law. And it's not just our private business, it's the whole world problem. It's never ever happened before. These political people tell me. I'm a simple woman. I'm telling you what political people told me. It's never happened before. And I suggest, and I demand, you must get solution. You must stop. All parties should stop immediately any materially operation, תתקן אותי אם אני לא אומרת נכון, act, until they release the children and babies and elderly and women and men. They must release them immediately and then make the war. You can't make wars on expense
strong pleading there from the relatives of those very youngest hostages who are missing, pleading for their release, pleading with Qatar to have leverage over Hamas, pleading with Israel as well not to commit to its ground offensive until these hostages are free. And as I said, these are some of the very, very youngest who are missing, including a baby taken at 9 months, now 10 months old, just 2 days ago, and 2 twins aged 3. The terror of that experience being relived by this family. And as one said, this is torture. The taking of hostages continues the torture for these families. And they've had to search through Hamas videos, entirely traumatic for them, in order to piece together what might have happened to their family members. Some children, 9, 4, 14, 8, 3 and 5. And that baby, 10 months old, as I said, just 2 days ago. Deeply traumatizing, deeply worrying, and truly terrorizing for these families to have to endure. We'll have more from Jerusalem after this break.
It's terrible, isn't it? Like,
mass released. We saw.
Where's the next one? I can't remember where it went now. This one.
Welcome back to Jerusalem. I'm joined now by Ashley Perry, a former senior advisor to the Israeli government. Thank you very much for being with us. Joe Biden has been here, Rishi Sunak has been here. Both have been talking about the danger of escalation in all this. Does Israel share those concerns?
Absolutely. I mean, the visit this week for international leaders basically had two parts to it. The first was to show solidarity, to visit Israel, to understand what's going on the ground and to see what is planned ahead. But just as importantly was to send a message to some of the rivals, Israel's enemies in the region, to try and send a message that they should not get involved, that they should not turn this into a regional war. We saw a rocket come across from Yemen, ostensibly aimed at Israel, which is a massive escalation, and we're seeing rockets come across regularly on the northern border. And we know that there are quite a few in the region who have a great interest in escalating this further regionally and perhaps even beyond. So the fact that these leaders are coming is really to send a message to Israel and its leadership and its people, but also really to send a strong message of support and solidarity that sends a strong message to those who would like to turn this into something much wider and more deadly.
Absolutely. Also concerns about civilian casualties. Both leaders mentioned that. Blinken says the way Israel does this matters. Do you share those concerns?
Absolutely. Everyone in Israel shares those concerns, but this war was started by Hamas. Every nation on earth would react with far greater force than Israel is even showing. And Israel never targets civilians, but unfortunately Hamas know exactly how to play into this. These are the new rules of asymmetric warfare, which makes it almost impossible for a clean war that we used to see historically. And unfortunately, they know very well the propaganda that is gained from seeing civilian casualties. And we saw that with the lies that have now been proven to be lies that came out over the hospital, not just in terms of who did it, but the numbers of those who were killed. So we're going to see more of those. And those are really just to put out as and try and create as much sympathy for the Palestinians. And we hope that the international media will be aware and tread a lot more carefully in the future.
Well, it is unquestionable, though, that many civilian lives are being lost. I just wonder, this blockade, I wonder what it is achieving other than, you know, a kind of collective punishment of the people of Gaza. What damage do you think it is actually doing to Hamas?
Well, there's a few different things that it's doing to Hamas. Most importantly, Hamas over the years have appropriated humanitarian aid, international resources and money to build an underground bunker system for them and their families. They don't care about the average civilian up on the ground. And what this blockade is doing is ensuring that the water, electricity and air is cut out from these underground bunkers, pushing these leaders, Hamas leaders, who are basically controlling what Hamas did, were behind the massacre on October 7th, pushing them up onto ground and allowing Israel to really disrupt the Hamas command. And so far in the last few days, Israel's been quite successful in managing to take out a lot of the Hamas command structure.
If that is the case, is a big ground operation with all the threat that involves to civilians in Gaza and, of course, to Israeli soldiers, if you're having this success against Hamas leaders, do you need to have a large ground operation?
Well, I'm not a military expert, but yes, there are a lot of places which Israel needs to get to that quite simply aircraft cannot. And again, what we should understand is Israel sending its ground forces to minimize civilian casualties, because it is quite possible for Israel to use as much air power as possible and flatten as much as Gaza as possible. But it is not doing that because it knows that there'll be major civilian casualties. So we are sending our boys and girls into Gaza to minimize, specifically to minimize civilian casualties, because it's a lot easier to do so from on the ground.
Okay, Ashley Perry, appreciate your time this morning. Thank you very much indeed. That is about it from Jerusalem for now. Let's go back to...
It's funny because I was thinking when I was talking before about Ukraine and Russia, I kept saying, why aren't Russia doing what the Americans did in Iraq and Afghanistan? Maybe because they don't claim it's a war, special operation, by sending jets over to do what Israel are now doing to Gaza. It'd be interesting to know how many buildings there were in Gaza on October the 6th and how many there are once this is all over. But this is why I don't like war, because because we work on money and things, you're making this place look like how Syria looks now. And imagine now, is it going to get rebuilt? How much that's going to cost? You know, it just seems from a human perspective, and people who don't like war, a waste of all the work and energy that are gone there. But I guess the problem is how else do you get these terrorists? I think though the idea of just dropping bombs, you know, it's very messy. But I suppose the problem is the alternative is sending troops in, and that will lead to more casualties on their side. But at least then you could, well, I suppose the thing is you wouldn't even be able to know who to target, because I guess Hamas, they don't wear like uniforms. So that's the other problem. How are you going to identify those ones? Here's the next one.
Attempts.
What sort of things have happened?
There's many threats from the sea. Let's keep it at that.
They're threats that will likely only grow. But so too for the families of the many remaining hostages in Gaza. Each missing person marked by an empty chair at this vigil in Tel Aviv. Pressure surely mounting on Israel to secure the release of their civilians before sending in their soldiers. Deborah Haynes, Sky News, Southern Israel.
Well, shortly after they were freed, the two women had a phone conversation with the American President Joe Biden. Speaking to journalists in the United States, the father of Natalie Raanan said he will now be able to rest easy, knowing that his family have been released.
I've been waiting for this moment for a long time, for 2 weeks. I haven't been sleeping for 2 weeks. Tonight I'm going to sleep good. I spoke with my daughter earlier today. She sounds very good. She looks very good. She was very happy. And she's waiting to come home. Her mother has a little scratch on her hand, but she told me it's nothing. She's okay.
Well, politicians from around the world meet in Egypt this morning to try and find a diplomatic solution to the conflict. The UN Secretary-General Antonio Guterres has again called for the Rafah crossing between Egypt and Gaza to be reopened to allow humanitarian aid to be delivered. Meanwhile, Israel's bombardment continues. Several people were killed as they sheltered in a church in Gaza. Well, this report from our international correspondent John Sparks contains images of the aftermath of an airstrike.
In the words of the United Nations, the Gaza Strip has now become a hellhole. Yet the only way to send in humanitarian aid is shut. 100 trucks packed with desperately needed supplies waiting at the Rafah crossing in Egypt, where they've been stuck for days. And it was here that the UN Secretary-General decided to ditch the diplomacy from a podium erected in front of the gate.
Behind these walls, we have 2 million people that is suffering enormously, that has no water, no food, no medicine, no fuel.
Moderation replaced with exasperation here as the Egyptians and Israelis disagree on the number and content of aid shipments.
These trucks are not just trucks. They are a lifeline. They are the difference between life and death for so many people in Gaza.
International aid agencies have become increasingly alarmed and their language increasingly strident. UN experts calling Israel's siege and bombardment unspeakably cruel. In Gaza City, the blast from an Israeli airstrike destroyed the hall and scout center at an Orthodox church. The Christian community had been using them as shelters. Put your hand under Salim, said one, as parishioners tried to extract their friends and loved ones from the rubble. This man had lost his life. God has deserted us, said some. Some, like this father of 3. Look at this child. Do you think he deserved to die? Said Ara Mansouri. He showed our team pictures of his children, Majdi, Julie and Swella. All 3 died in the blast.
This is a crime. It's a crime against humanity. This F-16 aeroplane threw these things knowing there were people down there. They did it with hatred. No one in Gaza feels safe. but being in the church gave us the feeling that we were close to God.
Israel says it doesn't target civilians as it seeks to destroy Hamas. But that means little to the congregation of St. Porphyrius, now living their own kind of hell. John Sparks, Sky News.
Meanwhile, 2 teenagers have been killed in clashes in the West Bank, bringing the total number killed in the Palestinian territory since the start of the conflict to 83. Palestinian youths and the Israeli military have been clashing daily, with many continuing to protest despite the threat of snipers. Our chief correspondent Stuart Ramsey was on the streets in Ramallah after Friday.
Okay, I think I already played that one, didn't I? You see the suffering on both sides. From what happened on October the 7th, with the people that were killed and the kidnapping, and then on the Palestinian side where church, my understanding is international law is meant to protect certain buildings like religious places, institutions and etc. The problem is, I guess Israel could say that there was some kind of Hamas bunker or something there, but the problem is what about the church? What about the mosque, the UN school, the university? These things are not meant to be struck because they're needed. And, you know, often they're used for people to hide so that they don't get... I mean, where are you meant to hide if you can't hide in religious places? But I guess the problem is we know that the terrorists may be using these as well, but the problem is, as we understand that and we know that, we can't just then drop a bomb and then say, well, we're going for them. It's just unfortunate, and because we've made this term collateral damage that somehow makes it okay to kill civilians. It just doesn't help your cause to do that, and you're replacing one suffering with another. I don't know. That's why I don't like war.
Seeing the repercussions of that period.
I finally opened it.
Yusra, I'm sure you will keep us up to date. Thank you very much indeed. Yusra reporting there from Cairo. Well, the UK charity Oxfam is fundraising to support the humanitarian situation, and its policy leader, Bushra Khalida, joins us now in Ramallah. We heard there from our correspondent in Cairo that charities have been crying in frustration. No doubt you've been sharing that despair, but are you feeling any more confident that aid might start moving into Gaza in the south?
Well, the humanitarian aid from Egypt is a commendable gesture, and from other organizations rallying up and preparing for this. Its efficiency must be really critically assessed in light of the vast needs of Gaza. According to the UN, Gaza was getting shipments of about 100 truckloads of aid per day to help cover people's needs. This was before all the bombing and displacement, and before all of the power and communications outages, including before when wastewater treatment plants were operating and weren't pouring raw sewage into the sea. So this shipment is only about, from what we've heard, about 20% of what Gaza was getting each day before the hostilities. We'll need 10 times more of this each day just to get back to where it was. And how long is that going to take? Intermittent relief, though extremely important and vital, can't really replace a comprehensive solution. The deeper issues are rooted in the persistent siege of Gaza and the crippling blockade. This demands urgent attention. And central to these concerns is the pressing need for a sustainable ceasefire. Without a cessation of hostilities, the conundrum remains. What value does aid have if bombings persist? The people of Gaza they face a grim predicament where they're at risk of perishing from bombs or succumbing to hunger. So a genuine solution really needs to address both the immediate humanitarian needs, but also the larger political issues that are at play.
Yes, I certainly heard a World Health Organization spokesperson overnight last night suggesting that they're starting small with the 20 trucks. Clearly, it's nowhere near what is needed from what you're saying about what they had before, and then they hope to build up. But yes, so you're pressing for a ceasefire then, because it's so difficult to get people to collect or distribute this aid if they're fearful of airstrikes.
Also, it's very important to note that fuel is not part of this aid. The fuel crisis has rendered wastewater treatment plants entirely non-operational, forcing, like I said, untreated sewage directly being poured into the sea. And this, coupled with the fact that Gaza's water was already 97% polluted, is only going to intensify an environmental and health crisis. Due to the level of destruction, most roads in Gaza are destroyed, and so that will exacerbate also logistical challenges. Without fuel, essential activities that we often take for granted, like cooking food or using generators for electricity, are going to become impossible tasks. So the entry of humanitarian supplies from Egypt is commendable. But again, the question remains, is this going to be sufficient to address the magnitude of the needs of Gaza's residents in the context where actually basic essentials are only a luxury? The ongoing siege on Gaza serves as the backdrop of this unfolding disaster. Intermittent relief really is not a long-term solution. We need to address the root causes, and we need an immediate ceasefire.
So just give us a sense of how bad it is. Certainly Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders, suggested that now doctors were having to carry out treatments on patients without using any painkillers. We've also heard reporting that people are suffering from dehydration because of the water situation. It's a very dysfunctional civil society right now, but from your reporting that you're getting from inside Gaza, paint a picture for us if you can.
I'd like to read you a text message I received from my colleague this morning. He said, "Finally, I managed to get bread for 5 shekel, but this will only last for half a day. When I was walking to the bakery, I saw people who came from Gaza sleeping in their cars because they were not able to find shelter. I saw people sleeping in shops, in the streets, on the asphalt, without any mattresses, with no blankets. It's a terrible situation. They're suffering. On my way back home, I found 2 children alone. They were crying. They told me they were in the UNRWA shelter, but their parents went to get food and didn't come back. We're looking for them. We can't find them. I was afraid to lose those children. I took them to a shop owner from Khan Yunis who knows the area and helped them look for their parents. We don't have electricity. We don't have water. We're buying fuel at double its cost. We rented a generator at a high cost just to pump water for 2 hours. We were able to buy water for double the price, but it can only cover the need for 1 day. We're not hungry. We have food, but we have very limited choices. Not what, of course, our children prefer, but this is not what is immediate right now. The market is limited, not like how it was in Gaza. The items are limited. We started securing some money. We're looking at the future, but we don't know how long we'll stay here for and what costs we'll have to pay. Each day I hear from my daughter and my son, "Baba, I want to return back to Gaza, to home." "Why, Baba? I want to go back to Gaza. I want to wear my uniform. I want to play football." It's difficult to go, Baba. The situation is risky. Inshallah, you will find your uniform and you return to play football at the club. My children are deeply affected by what happened at the hospital yesterday. They're scared. They didn't know how to make sense of it. It's difficult for them to understand why people are being targeted like this, and they're afraid they'll be targeted in a similar way.
Before she answers, hearing what the children are saying is just, how do these, I'm hearing this woman is bringing me to tears. How is it these stoic fucking politicians and world leaders don't feel this? It's their responsibility. We've decided to have a system where we've given our power away to these world leaders so that they can take responsibility and make these difficult decisions, but they're not making them. They're just making face value decisions and not caring for the people. None of them care for any real people. They just want to keep their land, keep their system, keep everything the way it is so that they can benefit. Because you only hear the pain and suffering from the little people, not from the world leaders. You don't see tears from them. You listen to this woman, how she's speaking. These poor children, and they understand it. They understand the fear because they haven't been brainwashed yet to believe in you're this, you're that.
The testimony of people inside Gaza like that, people like you and other charity organisations who commit their lives to giving aid to people, going back to that word frustration we used at the start, how does it make you feel?
I have my family in Gaza, and I can't see them and I can't help them, not only as a humanitarian worker, but also as their family member. I'm helpless. We tried as Oxfam, we have a partner where we were able to distribute hygiene kits, but this is not enough. We're unable to get anything in. So without being able to get anything in, without borders opening, without a ceasefire, we can't operate meaningfully. We can't do the work that we want to do meaningfully.
Bushra Khalidi, I hope your family stays safe. Thank you very much indeed for joining us once again. Oxfam Policy Lead joining us there in Ramallah. Thank you. So very difficult testimony then from people inside Gaza. Certainly the focus is once again on that border down at the Rafah crossing. Also here in Jerusalem with Rishi Sunak meeting the Israeli president and the Israeli Prime Minister. Joining them in their darkest hour was the theme of those meetings. He heading, we've now been told, to Saudi Arabia later on today. Full coverage of that to come, of course. But now let's go back to...
And the thing is, you've got to question is why? Why aren't they allowing medical aid in? Why aren't they having a ceasefire? Surely they're winning. I can understand the rationale behind the dropping of bombs on buildings because you want to hit underground targets Hamas have, and Hamas are using human shields. I don't condone it, but I understand it. But I don't understand the siege, the no food, no water, no electricity. That seems cruel, and it seems there's a mindset behind that kind of suffering. We've heard from both sides this idea of animal-human being used, which I know has been used in the past in different ways as well, obviously negative, and this is problematic because it suggests that, I don't know, I just can't see the reasoning, the rationale really for depriving innocent, there are innocent people there. Yes, there's Hamas people, maybe there are even people that are sympathetic to that because what choice have they got? But nevertheless, there are children, who've got nothing to do with us, absolutely nothing, we all know that. But they are suffering. There's a video that made me cry this morning that we're going to get to. It's going to be the last one, I believe, of this boy when he's looking for his brother. It just reminded me of my son. And that was just heartbreaking to feel that, this could be one of us in this situation. We're just lucky that we're not. But imagine if you were. And you could say this for the October the 7th as well, if you were in those kibbutz and whatever they are, and you were a child there and hearing people come and shooting and burning things and killing your parents or kidnapping you. Either way, whatever label we've put on ourselves, these are all children and human beings that are suffering. Here's the next one.
Crossed into Gaza after the Rafah border crossing was finally opened after days of negotiations. Lorries carrying humanitarian aid started moving into the border crossing area from Egypt just after 10 o'clock local time this morning. But it really isn't very much, just 20 trucks at most, for a population of more than 2 million people. This report now from our international correspondent John Sparks contains images of the aftermath of an airstrike.
If it qualifies as an agreement, it is chaotic and unclear, but it has resulted in this. The first 20 trucks, loaded up with life-saving supplies, have passed through the Rafah crossing in Egypt. This development is the result of days of negotiation. Yet the World Health Organization said this convoy would barely address Gaza's needs. Their officials calling for 2,000 trucks, not 20. And that's a view that's been endorsed by the UN Secretary General at this summit in Cairo.
The people of Gaza need a commitment for much, much more. A continuous delivery of aid to Gaza at the scale that is needed. the time has come for action. Action to end this god-awful nightmare.
A few miles from the crossing, Israel pounds targets as part of their campaign against Hamas. And the Israelis don't want the militants to benefit from these shipments. Their officials won't allow supplies of fuel, although hospitals in Gaza depend on diesel for power. The Israelis have dismissed these concerns.
The humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip is under control. We're continuing to emphasize to the residents of Gaza City and its surrounding areas to move south. The humanitarian supplies that will enter the Gaza Strip will go to the south.
International aid agencies have become increasingly alarmed, with food stocks running low and civilians forced to drink dirty water. Half the population remains in the northern section of the Strip, where a blast from an Israeli airstrike destroyed the hall and scout center at this Orthodox church. The Christian community had been using them as shelters. Put your
It repeats into the bit we've already shown. Okay. Oh, here they are. So the trucks have started, only 20, there was another 17 the next day, and 2 people have been released that were kidnapped. There's the next one.
Returning now to our top story, as Israel's military says it will intensify its attacks as part of its war against Hamas. Joining me now is Amy Shalan, chair of the British Palestinian Committee. Good evening and thank you for being with us. And I gather you want the UK government to do more to ensure the protection of Palestinian lives in all this.
Absolutely. There is a mounting case, a rapidly mounting case, that Israel is waging a genocidal war against the Palestinian people, and yet we're seeing the government and the opposition aiding and abetting these crimes. And this afternoon I just learned that the entire family of a young man I know has been killed. His father, brothers, sisters, and all of their children were killed when Israel targeted their home, and now 30 members of his family have been killed in the same strike. And other Palestinians here in London are asking their families in Gaza to go to different areas so that they don't lose everybody at once. So imagine being faced with that choice, whether or not to stay together while being deprived of food, water and electricity, and faced with this brutal bombing campaign from land, air and sea by Israel.
So I'm just interested in what you think the UK government, what more could they be doing,
what are they doing
that they're not doing?
Well, in the context of Israel's massive assault on the people of Gaza, we've heard today Rishi Sunak and Lisa Nandy's calls for humanitarian aid to Gaza and the restoration of water supplies. But that not only falls short of the legal duties of international states, the statements that they made are essentially also supporting collective punishment. The people of Gaza have been under a crippling siege for 16 years, and the fact that only a few aid trucks have been allowed in now, carrying water for less than 1% of the population for just one day, shows the appalling poverty of their response to the fact that 2.3 million Palestinians are facing severe dehydration and shortages of food, while Israel continues to carpet bomb their homes, hospitals, places of worship, and schools. And in supporting Israel and its actions, the opposition are aiding and abetting these atrocities against Palestinians, starving a population, denying them water, denying them electricity is not self-defense. Destroying their schools, hospitals, universities, that's not self-defense. And killing and injuring thousands of civilians and ethnically cleansing a population, none of this can be described as self-defense. And by invoking, if I could just finish, by invoking that right, both the government and the opposition are providing political cover for the ethnic cleansing that is currently underway.
So the point is that Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden and Anthony Blinken have all come out here and have warned Israel to act within international law. Anthony Blinken said the way Israel does this matters. So are you saying that Israel is just ignoring what Rishi Sunak and Joe Biden is saying?
I am saying that neither Rishi Sunak nor Joe Biden have been putting the appropriate pressure or the appropriate response to Israel. What we're seeing Israel is carrying out in Gaza is genocide in word and deed. Under international law, that's the intent to destroy in whole or part a national group or an ethnic or racial or religious group. And Israeli leaders have been very clear about their intentions. They've said that they're going to pulverize Gaza, and they have dropped hundreds of tons on bombs.
Amy, I should say that the Israeli, just one quick point. The Israeli government ministers that we've been speaking to here have been saying that it is a war on Hamas and it is attack on Hamas. That's what they are saying. They're making this distinction.
The defense minister said Gaza won't return to what it was before. We will eliminate everything. Netanyahu has said to the Gazan population, knowing that they can't leave now because we will act forcefully everywhere. And just yesterday, we had reports of leaflets being dropped in North Gaza saying that anyone who chooses not to evacuate could be identified as an accomplice of a terrorist organization in a clear effort to turn hundreds of thousands of Palestinian civilians who aren't willing or able to evacuate, including the sick and the injured, into being seen as legitimate targets. And that simply is unconscionable.
Amy, sorry we have to leave it there. We're running out of time, but thank you very much for coming on the programme. We want to talk about aid now, and aid is now starting to make its way.
I don't know. He needs some work on. He doesn't like it when people. I mean, no one does, I guess. When someone triggers your confirmation bias, your personal beliefs. He doesn't like it, and I know most people don't. But it really gets his back up when they start saying it. But he knows. He's reporting on it, but he's like devil's advocate. He comes down on both sides. But he must know that what's going on there isn't right, and I don't know how. I guess he's got a job to do to support mainstream. Alright, so we just got a few more and then that's it. 2 more.
More than 4,600 Palestinians have now been killed in Gaza, according to the Hamas-run health ministry. Not far off, half of all homes in the Strip have been either destroyed or damaged, according to the United Nations.
The severing of medical supplies and electricity is having an incredibly profound effect on the
severing.
But it's having a very profound effect on the ability for those hospitals to operate.
But that's part of the distorted information. It was Hamas missiles which broke down the electricity infrastructure in Gaza. Nothing to do with us. Water, we supply only 7% of the water. It's fuel. Hamas operation. There is fuel for the humanitarian need. It's under UNRWA. We are following very closely the humanitarian situation on the hour. Most of Gaza is functioning. There are areas that are under battle. This is a real tragedy, but how does the world want... How does the world cope?
We can't say Gaza is functioning.
How does the world cope? First of all, a lot of distorted information comes out of Gaza.
No, but we do have a team on the ground.
So
we do trust, and we can't say that Gaza is a functioning territory.
But the problem is, of course, that part of the infrastructure and part of the aid is hijacked by Hamas. That's the issue. Guys, it's very easy to blame Israel. Let's just remember where we were what happened and how do we have the right to defend ourselves when a missile that flies 250 kilometers straight into Israel comes from people's living room. That's the situation we're faced with. No other nation is faced with that. And had any nation been faced with that, believe me, they would have attacked the same.
Benjamin Netanyahu visited Israeli troops in northern Israel. The border is at a growing risk of becoming a new front in this war as Israel and Hezbollah exchange regular fire. But Netanyahu had a warning for Lebanon.
If Hezbollah decides to enter the war, it will miss the second Lebanon war. It will make the mistake of its life. We will cripple it with a force it cannot even imagine.
Tonight, outside the president's residence in Jerusalem, a vigil was held in support of the more than 200 hostages still being held in Gaza. Bit by bit, this war is escalating and spreading, but Israel is in no mood for mercy. Alistair Bungle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
Well, more than 200 people were killed in Gaza in the most recent attacks, according to the Gazan Health Ministry. The Sky News team witnessed the impact on families there. Aid moved into Gaza for the second day over the Rafah crossing from Egypt. But the United Nations has warned it's only a fraction of what is needed. Our correspondent Nick Martin has our next report, and I should tell you, this does include images of children injured in airstrikes.
An Israeli airstrike on a neighbourhood in central Gaza. This crushed pile of rubble was once home to the Abu Malik family. It's now obliterated, like the rest of this community. Since this lethal strike, they've been digging out the dead and searching for the missing. The local hospitals have been inundated. Men, women, children, all injured in these airstrikes. There's a boy inside with a leg injury calling for his mother. And another wants his dad as a doctor clears dust from his eyes. His sister behind him, dazed by the horror of the war they're now caught up in. In the morning, outside the hospital, they carefully laid out the victims of overnight airstrikes. Amal Al-Cord says she lost 12 members of her family in the attack. It was a residential neighbourhood, she says. They are all gone. Relatives have come here to find their loved ones. It's a desperate, sombre task. The names of some of the victims written on the sheets they're wrapped in. Noura Mohammed, Khalid Mohammed Mata, just 2 out of many.
They were brought to us as corpses and body parts. Since the early morning, more than 90 martyrs were taken into Al-Aqsa Hospital. You can hear the sound of bombing near Al-Aqsa now.
But amid the misery, there are small, tentative signs of hope. Another convoy carrying food and medicines has entered Gaza, but it won't be enough. 7-year-old Sammy lives in Ireland, but was visiting family in Gaza when the attacks happened. Since then, he and 90 members of his extended family have been living together after fleeing the north.
We're hearing a lot of rockets and bombs coming from everywhere. Very scary, and I can't sleep very well.
It's safety in numbers for children like Sammy, who relies on his brothers. But food is scarce and everyone's hungry. Over 1 million people have been displaced in Gaza. The UN says their fuel will run out on Tuesday, and without that, this humanitarian crisis will deepen. But it is often in the split-second moments that the horrors of war come into sharp focus. A boy called Khaled is looking for his brother, Khalil. Khalil's here, a man tells him. In this war, as in every war, it's the innocent who suffer most. Nick Martin, Sky News.
It's just so heartbreaking to see that boy. he finds his brother in a body bag and he leans down and kisses him and strokes his face. It doesn't matter whether you're Jewish or Israeli or Muslim or Christian or black or white or whatever. There's human beings doing this to human beings. What is the justification of this from a human level, of any of this stuff? Any of this stuff of the way we live? I think that was the last one. Yeah, that was the last one. That was this morning. It's just so heartbreaking, to see this, and how are these world leaders not seeing this? And even if you want to, live in the system that we live within, there's rules against this that they know are being broken, and that doesn't mean that you're not helping or supporting, what happened on the massacre on October the 7th. It's got nothing to do with that. They're separate events, but something has to be done. You can't be letting these children being suffering like this. I know, because Hamas have decided to stay where the civilians are on purpose, and now the information that we're getting, we don't know what's true or not, and because there's vested interests on all sides, whether it's the West, whether it's Israel, whether it's Hamas, whether it's Palestine. But these children are caught up in this. For their sake, it needs to stop. There needs to be a better solution. No one's going to come back from this, from killing people. I suppose if the Hamas, if they were truly religious, they'd give themselves up rather than let their people suffer. Even if they weren't religious and they believed in their people, they believed in Palestine, then they would give themselves up and face the consequences of their actions, which they'll have to do anyway if they believe in God. I know it's a very messy situation, it's very historic, there's lots of arguments about it, and there's lots of things that men have done throughout the years, legally and with land and all that kind of stuff, and the hatred that each side has for each other, and all the things that have gone on that have ignited that hate. Unfortunately, humans seem to be able to cultivate. But it's never going to help us in the future. And this is why I believe that the system we live in, it helps the system of dividing us up. It allows us to see each other as different, whereas we're not different. We're not. We are all the same. It doesn't matter whether you're American, Russian, Chinese, Syrian, Israeli, Palestinian. It doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. It doesn't matter whatever gender you are. It doesn't matter what colour you are. Nothing of these matters. What matters are all human beings. And we've all found ourselves in this place that we have to share and exist together, our one existence. Why choose this way? Take care, take it easy, God bless, and peace.